Call meeting to order. Please join me in Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening. Welcome to the May 12th session of Brookings City Council. As City Clerk to record attendance.
Council members, would you please respond present when I call your name? Bacon?
Present.
Brink?
Present.
Corbett?
Present.
Hanson?
Present.
Niemeyer?
Present.
Tilton Burn? Tilton Burn? Wendell?
Present.
Okay, thank you. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any public comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none, close public comment. Council comments or questions? Please call roll.
Brink?
Aye.
Corbett?
Aye.
Hanson?
Aye.
Niemeyer?
Aye.
Tilton Burn? Wendell?
Aye.
Bacon?
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda is approved. This time is open forum. Any member of the public can come up and speak to a topic that's not listed on tonight's agenda, and advise you that the microphones are on and they've been sanitized, so might not want to mess with them. Anybody have anything you'd like to bring forward that's not on our agenda tonight? Okay, I'll close the public forum then. So at this time, we're going to have a presentation of Proclamation on National Public Works Week. We have some of our department heads here, so they'll just come in, and they're all bashful and shy. So normally we'd have had them come down front and
Holly
gone down present.
has left.
So, you want to introduce your department heads?
Sure. Within the city engineers department, we have Jackie, our parks department, Dusty, Todd within our solid waste, and Mike within our community development. Our department heads, Dusty's fairly new, but the rest have been here for quite some time, but they do a phenomenal job.
Holly
Most cities
has
do
joined.
have a public works department. Our departments don't operate as a traditional public works department, but they do handle all the various services, and together they work collaboratively, much like a public works department would. So appreciate all their hard work, and just as importantly, all the employees that are underneath them, the service that they provide. Many times citizens aren't aware of what we do day in, day out, and that's okay, because that means we're doing great things with our employees and our services. That's when they do notice is when we're a little worried. But at the end of the day, they do provide professional services and ensure that they're maintaining our infrastructure, but just as importantly, providing a great future for our organization.
Thank you. And normally, as I said, we'd have them down front, and I'd go down the proclamation, and everybody'd file by and shake their hands, but times have changed a little bit lately, so we won't be doing that. But I'll read the proclamation. As just as, whereas the public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are vitally important to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Brookings. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without a dedicated effort by public works professionals who are responsible for the rebuilding, improving, and protecting our city streets, trails, airports, stormwater, solid waste, forestries, public lands and buildings, and the other structures and facilities which are essential for our citizens. And where it is the public best, let's try that again, whereas it is in the best public interest for our citizens, our civic leaders, and children to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in the community. And whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th anniversary of the National Public Works Week, and whereas the city community development, engineering, parks, rec and forestry, solid waste, and street department collectively and collaboratively provide public works services and programs, and whereas the aforementioned city departments identified and implemented innovative solutions to continue providing our citizens and essential programs and services during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Keith Corbett, Mayor of the City of Brookings, South Dakota, do hereby proclaim May 17th through May 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week. It would be appropriate to applaud. And I'm sure you'll take it back to your staffs and the other department heads that are not here tonight. We couldn't do it in Brookings without all of you. And again, as it says in the proclamation, especially during our COVID-19 pandemic, you've been crucial. So thank you on behalf of all the citizens.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
We do have a gentleman in the audience who would like to address the council. He missed your attention for the open forum segment.
Okay. Who? All right. If you'd come up and state your name, please, and
My name is Doug Metcalf. I live at 137 Trail Ridge Road, which is in Indian Hills.
Mhm.
And I have a couple of comments and questions. I am coming on 3 years living in Brookings. And one of the things that concerns me is a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, when you presented your comprehensive plan, I came to that meeting expecting to find my idea of a comprehensive plan would encompass the area that is now Brookings and future Brookings. And I found that most of the attention was around the intersection of 22nd Avenue and 6th Street. Living where I do, and all of the new rooftops that go in out there, I feel that we are underserved for services, basic services, grocery store, hardware store. Of all things, there's not even a bank out in that area. And it came to mind right after that meeting, on a Saturday afternoon, I needed something from a hardware department, so I go cross-country to Lowe's or Runnings, and I get what I needed. I come back, and as the project went on, I found that I needed something else, and I made the second trip to Lowe's and Runnings. And before the afternoon was over, I needed a third trip across town to go to Lowe's or Runnings. And so I'm asking if there is any way that you can plan, talk about, if there's anything on the board for bringing services to where the people are. And that is, I know we're running 20th, the viaduct interchange at 20th to accommodate the people of Aurora. If we had services over on our part of town, we would be able to accommodate the people that live in Volga. So it wouldn't be just our area, but if you know that along with that new apartment complex on 20th, we're having a whole lot of people live over there that do have to make those trips across town. And so it's a concern of mine that I wanted to bring to you, not looking for resolution other than to bring it that it is of interest that we would have something. The other question I have, and it is a question, what is the rationale between the city owning a liquor store when it can be a privately owned entity? There's probably opportunity for 2 or 3 off-sale businesses in town to be run by individuals, to be paid by taxes of individuals, to pay income to those individuals. And what brought it on was when all of the city functions were closed down for the 3 weeks, and all of a sudden, not only is there no income, but there's no sales tax being paid on. Where everywhere else, a liquor store was considered an essential entity. And it would seem to me that the government's job is kind of defined by providing services that individuals can't, don't, or won't by themselves. And here is a situation where the city is in not only direct competition, but there is no competition to that segment. And so I questioned whether that is something that should be looked at.
Sure, I can start with the development perspective. Just so you know, the areas around that you're talking about, the streets were built in a way that could attain potentially some commercial construction. If you go back to the comprehensive plan, and I believe if you go to the planning website that we have on our City of Brookings website, you'll find the comprehensive plan and what's called the future land use map. The future land use map looks at different areas and how, through transportation, proper zoning, from residential to mixed use to commercial, areas that could attain some of that commercial development. So there is some area within proximity that you're talking about that there would be opportunities for improvement. A lot of that is driven, though, by the private market, though at the same time the city is open to those discussions and assuring that we have proper infrastructure to allow that flow of transportation if and when it does occur. As far as the city liquor store, I'd love to hear the history of that. But every municipality is a little different in which they operate, the services they provide, from enterprise funds to general fund to outside agencies. The city of Brookings chose many, many years ago through a vote of the people to have city liquor governed through the city, or liquor governed through the city. And so therefore having a liquor store is a business, if you will, for us. And therefore we try to operate it as such. And maybe Steve, maybe you can comment a little bit on the history that you're aware of.
There is a procedure under state law where the voters of a community can determine whether or not the city would exercise its local option to hold both the on-sale and the off-sale alcoholic beverage licenses. This would not pertain to malt and wine licenses, but with respect to liquor, for example, the voters, at least I think the on-sale dates back into the late 1930s, but many, many years ago, the voters did determine that the city should hold both the on-sale or on-premises license as well as the off-sale. Now, those things can change over time. In other words, there are procedures for that to be changed, and there are probably there is an avenue for alternative ways in which the city's off-sale liquor store can be operated. So your points certainly can be considered, but until the voters were to change the structure, the city would hold the off-sale license. But we could have multiple locations that perhaps could be leased or assigned to private operators if that was a decision that the council made.
Okay, well, I appreciate, because like I say, I'm new to town, and I don't know the history. I know that of all of the nice things that are done and the good things that are Brookings, I appreciate, and I do love living here. And I really like the fact that we now have a garbage can for yard waste. It's the little things and the big things, and I appreciate those. It was just these two concerns, and it is a concern. It's not a criticism. It's not a recommendation. It's not anything other than it's a question. And if I have the first one, as far as not having any services in our area, I know I'm not the only one that have expressed that it has to be more convenient than it is. And so I appreciate you allowing me the time to come and express it.
Okay.
And so if I guess my background, I'm willing to offer my services if you would be looking at working on that, working on future development out in that area. I'd be willing to offer my services for what they are, but I appreciate you allowing me the time tonight to come and present this.
Would you be sure that the city clerk has your contact information? So we might want to take you up on some of your offers there. And for what it's worth, you know how many times a week I hear, why aren't there grocery stores on the south side of town? I live in Timberline, so I hear it a lot. And just for what it's worth, a few years ago, several college friends of mine said, we come to the Jack games, we drive our motorhomes, but there's no place to park a motorhome. Of course, we have Sexauer Park, but other than that. So I talked to some people and tried to figure out how do we put in a motorhome, motor park, whatever you want to call it. And I found out that the city of Brookings can't because that's in direct competition with private developers. So, but we talked to the private developers a lot about this. So, and I know Brookings Economic Development Corporation is working hard on all those. Because as you said, the south side of town is growing pretty quickly.
Appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, sir. Okay, now, going back to contracts and change orders, ask the city engineer to speak to Resolution 20-47.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item is action to approve Resolution 20-047, authorizing change order number 1 for the 2019-03 STI 20th Street South Improvement Project with Bose Construction. This project is the reconstruction of 20th Street South between Main Avenue and Rio Grande Avenue and involves storm sewer, water main, sanitary sewer, and new street construction. We found during this project that the water table is very high in this area along 20th between Rio Grande and Western Avenue, and the geotechnical engineer recommended drain tile for approximately 2,000 feet along both sides of the road. And we also found that a low area needed additional storm sewer inlet. So this item is to approve a contract change order for $45,130, which will be paid for out of the drainage fund. And it's under the bid limit for change orders, which is $250,000 for this size of contract. And staff recommends approval of the resolution.
Okay, thank you. Council entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, any public comment to this topic? Seeing none, close public comment. Council comments or questions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Corbett,
Aye.
Hanson, Hanson,
Aye.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tiltonburn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Brink.
Aye.
Resolution 20-47 is approved. There are no first readings, and so the next one would be public hearings and second readings. Ask city manager to introduce ordinance 20-007.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. The current incremental reopening resolution was put into place last Monday, and the first reading of the ordinance was also heard last Monday as well. Tonight is the second reading of this ordinance. The ordinance regulates bars, restaurants, recreational facilities, gyms, theaters, salons, and similar business types, with efforts to protect employees as well as patrons. Language promotes proper social distancing and good hygiene practices. General regulations include continued limiting groups to 10 or less and spacing of groups 6 feet apart. Employees shall wear masks within specific businesses outlined. Retail businesses, restaurants, gyms, and other businesses would open with 50% capacity. Regular disinfecting of high-touch areas and common use spaces, and if approved, the ordinance would be in effect until May 31st. The Chamber has compiled many materials for businesses to consider when reopening. This information is located on their website. And the city, on our COVID tab, has additional information for businesses but geared more specifically towards residents, including our frequently asked questions. The city staff does recommend approval of this ordinance as presented.
Okay, thank you. This time an open public hearing on ordinance 20-007. Again, it's an opportunity for the public to speak to this. Once the public is done, then I'll close the public hearing and council members can comment. So anyone care to speak to 20-007?
Good evening. Steve Timmerman. First of all, clarification, as you read the ordinance, you mentioned that was effective until May 20, sorry, whichever date you gave at the end of May.
May 31st.
But that's the resolution effectiveness. The ordinance, I believe, reads for 60 days.
Correct. The resolution, because it's an emergency, the ordinance, because it's an emergency, is allowable under that law for 60 days. But we put a date specifically in here to May 31st.
Okay.
So therefore, council will have to review it either next week or the next city council meeting to see if they want to extend it, make changes, or let it relax.
Very good. Just wanted to clarify that. So thank you. Additionally, after the previous meeting on May 4th, we corresponded with the city council and provided some questions about how, if this ordinance is passed as proposed, the city's going to handle this so it's effective and equitable and consistent. There's been no response back to us individually to our email that we sent. I see a puzzled look by Mr. Mayor. Did you get the correspondence?
No, I did not.
I checked with one counselor, I know it went through. Anybody else in the dark? I used the group city email. Okay, well,
Steve, I read it, but I didn't respond.
okay. Well, I just want to make sure it went through. So,
Yeah, I got it.
okay. Apparently the email doesn't work consistently then, so I apologize that all of you didn't get it, but I used the link provided. So as a follow-up, and I guess I'll try and summarize and not be too lengthy, we still have concerns, and when I say we, I'm also speaking on behalf of my wife, Melanie, on how this was going to be consistently enforced. And I'll just enumerate a few quick things. For example, why it's just countertops and in some areas like that and businesses and other high-touch areas. There doesn't seem to be a consistent manner in which we're looking at this. And all high-touch areas and public places aren't being addressed either by this ordinance. And it does exclude places like city buildings, for example, but significant high-touch areas like doorways aren't being addressed, which are more problematic than some other areas. As far as the mask wearing, I brought that issue up before, and again, just in the very short time I've been here this evening, seen several times where the masks are not being used effectively. But as we put this ordinance forward and look at making this effective to people in the restaurant industry, it's unclear to me how they're going to be educated and have this be effective, and so it's actually safe for somebody who's working where they have to cook and have clean hands and have to deal with the mask when they're, especially in a kitchen area where it's really hot. It seems to be quite impractical for that service line, but yet that's one of the areas that's being spelled out in this ordinance. And again, with the masks, we don't even know if they're starting out with clean masks. As I put in my email, just the correspondence we have with people that we know that work in businesses right now that are using masks. We know they're not being used correctly. And I know it's a condition for which the businesses need to take charge of that. But again, it's as you lay this out and put it into regulation, then one of the questions that comes up later in the email I sent is how are we as the city council and the city enforcing this ordinance? And some of the specific things I put in there is which agencies are enforcing this. It's not clear to me who's doing that, how they're going to be consistently enforced. Is the city going to rely on people tattling to say, I went somewhere and I saw this wasn't happening correctly? Oops, I'm sorry, I keep bumping the mic. At the last meeting, Councilor Hanson was one of the people who noted how people within the city already have attention because of what's going on. If this ordinance goes forth through as proposed, then that could increase attentions a lot more amongst the citizens and also between the citizens and the city council. And one of the things too is where do people report if they notice a concern? I also put in my email, how are we looking at the mental health aspect of this? I inquired about the authority and expertise that you're using for your decision. One of the specific things is in the 7th whereas, it says available modeling is being used, but it's unclear what available modeling is being used to do this. And I'm trying to hit the highlights here. And the last part of it was the specific metrics that are being used to know where we're going to be when we get to May 28th, or the date that's been given. And the concern too about, as we're putting this forth as a specific ordinance around the current situation, how is the city going to respond when we're at the next viral threat, and how are we going to keep promulgating ordinances to attack or work against every potential threat that comes up or not. And overall, my admonition to the city council is, instead of putting this forth as something that's prescriptive, which in its current form is going to be hard to enforce, it's inconsistent, to put it forth as something educational to help educate the community, so they know the right things to do, but not put it forth in a manner that's going to penalize the community.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Anyone else care to speak to 007?
Rick Ebe. I'd like to clarify a few things. I don't know about enforcement. I do know that the city council has been tasked with an impossible task. And I'm glad you're doing something. I'm glad you're trying. And if we're the most aggressive city council in the state, God bless you. I'm all for it. So I know there's issues. I trust you to work them out. COVID is a fluid situation. We don't know what's going to happen next week. We got to play it day by day. I think you're doing that. Mr. Timmerman asked about mental health. There's a lot going on with mental health. There are a lot of agencies out there, a lot of things that are available. That is being addressed. I'm just going to leave it at that. I think the biggest misconception is masks. Okay? I wear a mask. I don't need to wear a mask here because I'm 6 feet away from everybody. All right? What's the purpose of this mask? I don't care if you touch your mask. I don't care what you do with your mask. The purpose of this mask, which is not an N95 mask, this isn't the kind of mask that needs to be used when you're working with sick people, direct contact. This is a mask to protect other people from you. So if I'm walking in the grocery store where I can't be 6 feet away from people, I put my mask on. So when I cough or sneeze, I don't spew 6 or 10 feet and get somebody else infected. The mask is not to protect me, it's to protect you. We all need to be wearing masks in public if we can't be 6 feet away. I carry mine in my car. When I go into the grocery store or whatever, I know I can't be 6 feet away from people. I put it on. I don't care if I touch it. I don't care if I get it dirty. I can clean it. There are online, and we're working on some literature to help people know how to take care of their mask, how to wear it properly. I heard the argument last week that people aren't doing it right. What's the use? The use is we have to try. If we don't try, we've admitted defeat, and we're going to be in for the big H word. We could have another resurgence here in a couple of weeks. CDC predicts that we're not supposed to have it till the end of the month in South Dakota. So we may not have seen the worst of it yet. We need to keep trying. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hebe. Anyone else care to speak? Public comment. Okay, seeing none, close public comment. Council comments or questions? Oh, Councilman Green.
I'd like to make a comment. To date, we have had 14 total confirmed cases in Brookings County, and all 14, 100%, are recovered. These are confirmed cases. Of course, there could be more that we don't know about. Additionally, there are 11 counties in South Dakota with more cases than Brookings has had, and 2 that are tied with us in case numbers. Yet we are the 5th most populated county in South Dakota, so that says something about how we're stacking up against others. Governor Noem's Speak Out, published in the May 6th edition of the Brookings Register, stated, and I quote, "If you've not read it yet, our back to normal plan does not include new government programs, more red tape, proscriptive phases, tight controls, or anything of the like. That's not South Dakota. Our plan continues to put the power of decision-making into the hands of the people where it belongs." And you may agree or disagree with her, but she is our governor. Our Chamber of Commerce has done a great job putting surveys out for the business community, and the last survey came in last night with over 100 businesses reporting data. Over 70% of those businesses are seeing a decrease in sales. 13% are laying off employees. A total of 48% are doing one of these 3 things: reducing hours, furloughing staff, or laying off employees. And about half of the businesses surveyed anecdotally report that their customers are saying that their spending is currently reduced due to income insecurity. that's just something about what's going on in the economy here locally. A result of these facts is another statistic from that survey. 36.5% of the businesses indicated they could be contributing less to nonprofits in 2020 than in 2019. And when a family's income is reduced, the family cuts out non-essential spending and focuses only on the needs and not the wants. This is the same for businesses as well. It seems to me, and I am not an expert, that the medical community, scientists, and policymakers do not have one set of facts that we can agree upon nationally, globally, or locally. And history might tell us clearly what we should have done, when we should have done it, but the reality is, like Dr. Hebe mentioned, we don't know at this time. We can simply try our best, make the best decisions possible in an ambiguous world. But for me, the inconsistencies of this legislation, the difficulty in enforcement, and the fact that I believe in our constitutional right to freely assemble, I do not support codifying these guidelines into law. I support individuals and businesses following these guidelines as well as they can to continue to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. As guidelines, they are admirable, and I encourage you all to follow them. But I do not support them as a law. And as always, individuals may choose whether to patronize establishments where they feel safest or not. So I'll be voting no, and I just wanted to explain my reasons.
Yeah, I'm going to be voting yes on this because I don't like a mask either. When Roxy and I go to the store, if I go by myself, I have my mask. We have them in every vehicle. Put them on. We take care of them. I don't like wearing them, but now's not the time to start relaxing in Brookings. Yes, we've got 14 as of today. That's 14 more than I want to have in Brookings, but it's 14 we've got. As the numbers continue to increase in our state, there's no guarantees we're not going to be next. And so to me, this is not the time to start relaxing it. A number of emails, I hope council have received those, and phone calls also from employees saying thank you. I feel better at going to work, and I'm sure they don't like wearing a mask either. But the point is, our job as a council is to protect the safety and health of the citizens of Brookings, and we've got to be taking that serious. So, as I said, I plan to vote yes on this.
I'd like to answer a couple questions that were asked, just so that people understand. As far as marketing of masks and the education, I know our marketing individual has put information out there on social media. The chambers also put a packet together. We could also work through them. We could always do better with our marketing and information. We'll gladly take that criticism and move forward with it. As far as enforcement, I stated last week, we're going to be more reactive with this, try to work with businesses as much as possible. But those people who do see violations can certainly call the city at 692-2113. Once again, 692-2113. If they do see a violation, and we'll gladly go out there and address it if it does materialize into something that needs addressed. As far as how we'll be monitoring metrics, we are working hand in hand with the Brookings Municipal Hospital, and their administrator, Jason Merkley, has been working with us to identify what those potential metrics might be. I don't know to the extent that they've been fully developed, but we are trying to work with them, and as mentioned earlier, things are constantly moving. And so that whatever it is, it's going to have to be addressed constantly. But what I can tell you is that as staff, I know we're dedicated to talking through this daily and of course weekly, and once we see a change, either decreasing or increasing, we'll notify the city council immediately so that they can have further discussions, and then of course take appropriate action. I believe that probably answered most of the questions that were asked.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members have comments? Seeing none. Oh, Councilman Niemeyer, sorry.
I was just waiting to see if anybody that was listening in. I guess I will be voting for this also. I think I kind of stated my case last Monday that I feel that we need to ease back into our economy so that just so that we're able to try and go the direction that we still are. As Dr. Hebe, stated, CDC doesn't think we're going to hit the peak or hit the max until, say, the end of the month or maybe the first part of June. We'll take a look at this towards the end of the month, see how we're doing, and maybe be able to ease it up more. We've got this thing that says for 60 days, but that doesn't mean that we can't change it or amend it by that time. And you know, Chief Miller, way back in one of the meetings that we had, basically stated one time, you make a law so everybody drives at 55. Not everybody's going to follow it, but the majority of the citizens will. So it's more guidelines and a bar to go by. I think most people will use their common sense. Like Leah said, you know, I think most people will. But this is making it basically official. And I feel that we need to do that. I think that the one thing that Leah forgot to say was 50% of the businesses think we're doing a good job as a council and what we're doing, and 50% don't. And so I get that, and I was in that survey on this time. I didn't do the other three, but I did this one. And those numbers are probably very true. I don't doubt them at all. But there was a lot of people that wouldn't comment either way, which I thought was interesting. I felt that survey that you should be able to, you know, speak your conscience. But anyway, with all that being said, I will plan on voting for this, and I still feel that we're going in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members? Not hearing anyone. I'm sorry. Someone? Okay. Entertain a motion to approve Ordinance 20-007.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, we'll take that as a motion. Second. Council, any more opportunities to speak to this? Okay, please call a roll.
Hanson,
Aye.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tilton Burn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Frank,
No.
Corbett.
Aye. Okay, Ordinance 20-007 is approved. Under other business, ask city manager to speak to, and I think he's got Heidi here to help him as support, right, for the outside agency funding process.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. For the 2021 budget, I'm recommending collaborating with the United Way for funding of social service agencies. If approved, staff will identify amount for funding through the 2021 budget process for outside agencies. Any social service agencies can then make application through the United Way for fall funding through either city or United Way through the United Way process rather than the traditional June process. The United Way would then make a recommendation to City Council. The finalized funding levels would ultimately come back to City Council for recommendation. Once again, we would identify the dollar amount. United Way would open up funding for that recommended dollar amount, and then ultimately they'd bring back that recommendation for City Council to take action. This money would always stay with the city, and the ultimate action would be done by the City Council. Staff requests social service agency applications be submitted through the fall through the United Way rather than June per the governance and ends process. City staff does recommend approval of this process, and Heidi is here with the United Way to answer any questions council might have of this process.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Once again, it's an opportunity for the public to speak to this. Heidi, did you have anything you want to share on this, or stand by for questions? Or? Okay. Nice mask, by the way.
Spider-Man is here. So,
Introduce yourself.
yes.
You with Tim.
Tim Leeson, I'm the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of the Northern Plains. So first of all, just want to thank the council for their ongoing support of the club over the years and for all the nonprofits here in Brookings. And also want to thank city manager and also Heidi. So Paul and Heidi for taking the time out of their busy schedules to be able to, have a call and be able to talk through this new process. So, so excellent conversation with them here again today, and just wanted to get some input from the council as far as how that process would work, for example. So, as far as the application is being submitted, is there the opportunity as they're creating the app, the questions for the application? What I'm looking for is just to see if the council will have input as far as as far as what those questions will be. I know that the city application right now is it is a little bit different than the United Way one, and don't want to create a bunch more work for Heidi and for that committee and stuff, but just wanted to hear about just a conversation and input from the city council as far as the questions that will be included, just to make sure that the nonprofits that are applying are meeting those goals and the needs that the city council sees for our community. And then I just had one other question, and Paul talked about it a little bit, but as far as how will that process work, as far as I know you'll get the recommendation, and I appreciate what Heidi and the United Way will do, and then how will that process work as far as when you get the recommendation from the United Way, as far as how that will be allocated between the nonprofits that have been listed. So thank you again for your time, and appreciate any feedback you can give.
Thanks for all the great work the Boys and Girls Club are doing and continue to do for our young people.
Thank you, and yeah, we're looking forward to seeing kids back at the club here too, so thank you.
Did you want to speak to those questions while they're still fresh in everybody's mind?
Sure can. Just so everyone knows kind of the history of how this process works in the past. So in the past, what had happened is that the city manager and staff would put together a series of questions for an application, all administratively, and the city manager makes ultimately the recommendation to city council. Through our city charter, that's the process, outlined very vaguely that the city manager makes recommendation to city council of the budget. So therefore, it's a much administrative process. Having worked with non-for-profits most of my life throughout my municipal career, I appreciate and value what people like United Way does for our community. I, as city manager, don't have my pulse on all the non-for-profits and the true need in our community. So therefore, the desire to have a different process. So the questions to date from the city mainly have been created by an administrative process. If council has goals, priorities, they should let that Heidi know now of that process, but you also have until November to make that decision, because that's when the process would open up. Right now, within the governance or the goals and priorities that city council does have is within the governance and ends. And now, mind you, that was made by many council members many years ago. Governance and ends does give us some guidance, and it says that we shouldn't budget more than 4% for our outside agencies. We budget more than 4% for our outside agencies. Not much more, but we do. And I can tell you that it goes to great services here in this community. It does mention that applications should serve an outcome that improves the quality of life for the citizens of Brookings, which is something that they have to provide. Applicants must provide a but-for, meaning that services would be offered if not for funding. And then the final one, applicants must have the ability to become self-sustaining through the duration of the funding commitment. And so much of that we've tried to follow, but there's also a lengthy application, I believe 4 or 5 pages, which the city clerk and assistant city manager over this last year have helped us to refine. But those questions are geared towards anyone from economic development agencies to social service groups, such as, and maybe it's not even social service, but like the community band, to non-for-profits. And I don't know that all those are appropriate for not-for-profits. All those are appropriate for economic development. But what I'm recommending tonight is utilizing a partner within our community that has a pulse on our non-for-profits. And so when it comes to questions that City Council has, if you have thoughts tonight, I think it'd be great for Heidi to hear those. And I think the United Way, and you can probably speak to this, Heidi, is open to any priorities that you would like to make. My intention is to utilize the services of United Way and their expertise, at the same time not create a lot of work for them. They do have a rubric that's already been created, a board that's well educated and represents a lot of this community, and the ability to bring back recommendations. Those recommendations I would see after they make the determination in the fall, come back to us as staff, and we'd bring it before you, potentially in a work session, but more importantly to a meeting where you would make the final approval as council. And you would get an impact report as well based on those recommendations the following year through that funding process.
Anybody else have a comment?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
this is Dan. Say, not to put him on the spot, but I think what he's kindly hinting at is there's a question within the city application that is not necessarily part of the current United Way application. And that specific question or that specific area of the city application is really what allows the Boys and Girls Club to highlight the service that they provide in the community and their need. And so I don't know if he would be willing to come up and specifically address what question or set of questions that is, just so that everybody's better aware of what exactly his concern is.
He handed it off.
Hi, my name is Nicole Beaver, and I'm the Chief Development Officer for the Boys and Girls Club. I don't know that there's necessarily one specific question to answer Counselor Hansen's question, but the kinds of projects we propose to be funded by the city are very different from the kinds of projects that we propose to be funded by the United Way. And so we just want to make sure that any concerns of the council are being addressed. There are certainly ways for us to fit what we've done in the past into the mold of what's asked of us by the United Way. But we just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to the council, that we're providing the information to the kinds of questions you would want to ask. For example, something that the United Way's form asks about would be how do our projects help uplift citizens or help uplift people in their situation in life? And we can see how a lot of nonprofits do that. For what we might present to the council in a similar type situation would be what sort of economic benefit does the club bring to the city? Because that's certainly a concern of yours. And so that's something definitely that we want to address. And so we just want to make sure that we're answering all of the questions that you might have through this process. And so we appreciate your help in understanding how we can best do that for you and how this new process might facilitate that.
Okay. Maybe if we somehow, if we're whoever's talking to whom here, make sure that we've got those questions. And you probably have them, I don't know.
Yeah, actually, Heidi from United Way has a copy of the application, the city application, and has reviewed them to compare them with the United Way questions. And maybe, Heidi, you can talk a little bit to that.
Thanks, Nicole.
One of the questions we do have, for example, is how does this impact our sales tax? And that might be a little bit more difficult for non-for-profits. At the same time, it does help lift people up, and that ultimately provides an economic impact. But Heidi, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the questions on the city questionnaire as well as the United Way.
Yeah, really what we're looking at, and we can make those adjustments if there's something that is currently in the city application that isn't in the United Way application that you guys want to see, we can make that part of this new process. Same way with if you guys have specific priorities that you would like to be upheld within that process, that can be done. We would like to be able to start keeping some things consistent, but certainly able to add in those portions for the city portion of that application.
Sounds like just communication needs to keep going back and forth with everybody, so.
Yeah, so the application process would open in September. And so we are looking at, we have slotted in the month of July to start working on any changes that we need to make to our application. So during that, between now and then, if council had specific questions or priorities to be included, we can make those changes then.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This is Holly, and I think this has already been said, but something that I do want to clarify. I had the opportunity to touch base with Heidi and Paul before this meeting to ask a lot of the questions that I had, and one of my questions was similar to the question at hand. And the thing that really kind of eased my mind a little bit is just the reinforcement that City Council really does take the recommendation that the United Way will be providing and then votes on that. And so ultimately, the council at that time could adjust the recommendation or, could vote in a way that maybe more aligns with what the city is hoping to do or hoping to accomplish with those funds if that doesn't align with the recommendation provided by United Way. And so I do think at that meeting, when we vote on the recommendation, if there are questions, I would hope that we would have applicants in the room, that we could ask some of those questions to, and keep that dialogue going, so that it's not just United Way looking at a set of applications and just kind of pushing that through. The council will have the opportunity to kind of ask some of those questions. In all of that, though, as I'm hearing some of these comments, I do wonder, would there be any benefit, or would it be possible to allow some of these organizations to actually submit 2 applications? Because I know that the way it's kind of set up now is that it seems there would be one application where they could kind of mark a box where they say that they're requesting United Way funds, and mark another box where it would say that they're requesting city funds. But would there be any benefit to submitting 2 separate applications in the event that there's 2 very different proposals that those organizations would present in front of the 2 different organizations?
This is Heidi again, and the way that I foresee it is that if they click that they're looking for city funding, then a different set of kind of program questions would come down. The information in the application about who the organization is, the contact information, those kind of things are going to stay the same, whether it's for the city funding portion or for United Way portion. So in some respect, it is 2 separate applications. The program part could have different questions in it to be able, again, to see which specific questions the council wanted to have on there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And thank you to the United Way for being willing to kind of step up and help us with this process. The work you guys already do is incredibly valuable for the community, and now you're hoping to add this on top of it. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Can I piggyback on that?
Mayor Corbett?
Oh.
Yes. Oh, hold it. Councilmember Brink had.
Go ahead, Patty.
This is Patty. Yes, the only other question I had was, with the applications, would there be maybe an appropriate time at a study session this summer or something that you could bring the proposed new application and we could look at it, look at our old one, just to make sure that we're comfortable that the questions the city wants answered are in there?
Certainly, if you guys can review and maybe highlight the ones that you want to be in there for sure, then we can certainly bring back that finished product for you guys to review once before it goes into effect.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Brink.
Yeah, my question was simply kind of about timing and trying to understand this. An additional question I had was whether or not 2 separate applications would be happening. So in the case of an entity that would typically receive money from both organizations, that's still possible to do through this application process?
Yes.
Okay. And then my question was kind of timing related for how this works. You mentioned the fall kind of for United Way's process, but then we have this May, June deadline for this year. Is that a one-time thing just to get us synced up with their schedule, or would we always have to be leading out a couple months? And then second to that, how are we determining what funds are available for that?
Sure.
Can you just walk us through that?
And so what I would suggest using is this year as your kind of baseline, but at the end of the day, it's up to council. We will try to find that 4% in the general fund that's recommended through your priority project or through your governance and ends process, unless you guys up it, decrease it, or what have you. Right now, the amount that you guys give of that 4%, and I'd have to go back and look at my, well, you know what, I think I have it here, is about 2.4% of that overall 4%. So I would try to keep with that percentage, but at the same time, it's entirely up to council if you want to dedicate more to your non-for-profits. Because part of that money does go to other places like your research park, and then I think you have some other ancillary items, but the majority it does go to the not-for-profit. So what we would do is, through the budget process, is identify that dollar amount that we would recommend to City Council that you could afford to give this much to non-for-profits. You as council would then, through the budget process, allocate that much and tell Heidi that, hey, this is how much we have to offer. And then through that recommendation coming back to you, you guys would make that final determination before the beginning of the year. Because at the end of the day, our budget would get passed in September, but allocations wouldn't happen to January. So it actually fits very well with your fiscal year process. It's just a change in the overall process. And then identifying upfront how much you can truly afford.
Any other council members have questions or comments?
Mayor Corbett, this is
Yes.
Nick.
Yeah, Nick.
I have a question about the other agencies that apply for the other outside agencies that apply for general funds, but would not fall under the United Way. We would be considering them separately. I think this most recent year there were 8 agencies that don't seem to be categorized under United Way funding. So does that mean we'll be operating kind of 2 parallel approval processes for agencies that are applying for general funds?
Yes, yes. You would have the non-for-profit social service agencies that we'd recommend going through the United Way. Then you'd have those other agencies such as the research park, your community band. Sometimes you have a request from the Friends of Baseball or the swimming club. And I don't know the rest of them off the top of my head, but those would come back to us. I think we have a little bit greater pulse on the need there within those agencies. Non-for-profits, not so much. It'd be much like we would still accept applications for the 3B and pillow tax as well. That would include your Convention Visitors Bureau, your economic development, your chamber. A lot of those tied to your economic development endeavors in the community.
Okay. That answer your question, Councilman Wendell?
It does, and I I'm supportive of trying this process. I thank Heidi and the team at the United Way for their willingness. I'll be curious to see whether or not it creates greater efficiency in our process, because it seems like it may still be kind of cumbersome, but I'm willing to try this process if everyone involved feels like it's going to create efficiency and make sure the money gets to the agencies that need it.
Any other council member have questions before I call the roll or comments?
Mayor Corbett, this is
Yes.
Holly, and I have a follow-up question to Nick's question there. Paul, I think you might be the best one to answer it. You had stated that we typically give right around 4% to outside agencies. Does that include those other organizations that you just mentioned that would be handled separate from the United Way process?
Yes, it does. The 4% of general fund includes those social service agencies I mentioned, but also the research park and then Friends of Baseball and those other ones. The ones that are funded out of 3B and pillow tax, that account for about $1.1 million, and that's completely separate from the general fund.
So the reason I ask that is this process is going to be a little bit divided in how it happens. So we would essentially first be passing our budget, in which we would have to identify a dollar amount that we would allow to be given to outside agencies, and it sounds like we'd be trying to stick to that 4%. So it kind of sounds like some of that 4% that we would budget would be accessible to the agencies applying through United Way, and some of that 4% would be for agencies still directly applying to the city. Do we have some kind of plan or indication as to how we would inform United Way in terms of how much of that 4% they would have the ability to award? Because I do think knowing the pool of money that you have available to you is important when identifying who you would recommend funding.
Yeah, I foresee that identifying that pool amount probably in that mid-June timeframe when we start having study sessions on the budget. And especially before the budget is complete, which is in September, we'll know that dollar amount. And that 4% is what we're going to target. But once again, it's up to council whether or not you want to cut some of the other agencies to give more to social service agencies, or if you want to stick closer to that $470,000 or $413. I'm sorry. Does that answer your question, council member?
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, are we going to, in the budget, identify that half of that 4% is to go to the agencies applying through United Way, whereas the other half of that 4% goes to those other organizations that you mentioned that would not necessarily be funneled through United Way, or are we going to wait until we see the applications? I guess I'm just not clear on. I understand that we'll try to identify 4% overall in the budget, but if we are still dividing how they apply, will we in advance have an idea of this group of people will have access to X number of dollars, whereas this group of people will have access to Y number of dollars?
Yeah, through the budget process, we will identify that amount from staff, but at the end of the day, it's up to council. That percentage or breakdown of that 4%, about 2.3% or 2.4% goes to non-for-profits. And so we try to keep with that same ratio as much as possible. The dollar amount, though, will probably change this year only because of projections of revenues. And we're going to try to get the best estimates as much as possible from the state so it doesn't negatively impact everyone. And hopefully we can shoot for a rebound next year. But once again, we will identify, council member, those dollars for the United Way, for social service agencies to make requests for very early on in the process. And council will be a very big part of that process as well.
Perfect. That clarifies that for me. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments? Bonnie, please call the roll.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tiffenburn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Brink,
Aye.
Corbett,
Aye.
Hanson.
Aye.
All right, the outside agency funding is approved, and as questions come up again, communication. Keep talking, and we want a perfect system, and our agencies sure need that and deserve it. So, looking ahead, folks, May 26th. Again, with a Human Rights Commission appointment, and then looking ahead, we'll have a bid award on the library and the BAC roof projects. Bid letting is next Tuesday on those. Second reading and public hearings on malt licenses and 2 video lottery licenses. And we'll talk also about the fee schedule update. Jake's going to update that on the electric car charging station rates. And then we'll have 2 annexations. Anything on May 26th you'd like to add to the agenda?
Mayor Corbett, this is Nick.
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Some of this may more naturally occur before the May 26th meeting, but if it has not been shared publicly yet, I'd like to hear from Paul and the staff some more clarity around our parks and city-owned facilities, their current closures, and what thresholds we'll use to determine whether or not the equipment in our city parks might be accessible again, and if they're not going to be accessible by the 26th, how we're making some of those decisions and how we can clearly communicate, in particular in outdoor venues, what is accessible to the public and what is not, and how we're making some of those decisions.
Sure, appreciate the question, council member. First and foremost, we do plan on opening the city-county building in collaboration with the county next week. Much of that depends on how quick we can get some materials following a lot of the requirements that City Council passed within the resolution, not only for our offices, which isn't clearly defined, but still following CDC best management practices. When it comes to the parks, though, that's a little different animal. What we are doing is working with associations, asking them to come up with plans to make sure they can meet CDC requirements. A lot of those associations have national associations they belong to, and they're outlining guidelines for a lot of the different groups, softball, baseball, what have you. City staff is working with them to start allowing them to practice. No games at this point in time. We'll probably looking more towards June for that. So that's going to be forthcoming here before too long. Once again, we are asking those associations to come up with plans, present them to staff. At the same time, staff is gladly working with them to help them maneuver through a lot of this. It changes day by day, and I think it's going to change as we continue to move forward. The other items, we are looking at plans to reduce and mitigate the risk as much as possible. Some of that is just not going to be possible. So when we do decide to open up the playground equipment, which we hope to do so before too long, we will have signs out there warning, assuring that people understand the risk involved with playing on some of this equipment. All that's going to be strategic. The pool, for example, I've had a lot of questions on that. We'll know, at least we have to make a decision by June 1. Part of the hang up there is and I wouldn't say hang up, it's just the communication with the Red Cross and the CDC. The Red Cross provides training for all of our lifeguards, and therefore not until the CDC and the Red Cross get along and put together a program will we get our lifeguards trained for that facility. So, council member, and for those watching tonight, would ask that you continue to look at the social media websites that we have, the daily newspaper, and of course the radio. We'll try to get that information out as much as possible. The guidelines that we are following are set nationally, and so what we're trying to do is balance what's going on across the nation and what's going on here in Brookings, while also following the resolution and guidelines put forth by City Council. So baseball, softball, a lot of those associations will be opening up before too long, but they'll have to meet the no greater than 10 rule or continuing to keep separation of 6 feet apart. And it'd probably be more or less practices at this point in time. But once again, we're trying to work with all those different agencies. For tennis, for example, I think that's one that we're looking at bringing back. Basketball, not so much at this point in time because it's hard to keep that distance of 6 feet by playing basketball, practicing, or what have you. So each little process we're trying to evolve and make sure that we meet and mitigate risk as much as possible.
Thank you.
One thing I would like to mention is I would like to thank Heidi for all her work on this process that the council just voted on. Of course, Tim for the communication over the past few weeks, and all the outside agencies that we've spoken with as well.
Hey, council, anything else for future discussion? Hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Good night.
Dan.
Has left.